All right, good morning, church. Good morning. Good to see everybody, as well as I can see you with the lights on me. Good to see you all today, though. Wonderful to be here. My name is Darren Gruitt. If you don't know me, I'm one of the elders here at Village Church East. As you can see, Pastor Craig and Beth are out of town, enjoying some much-needed time away with family and relaxing and resting. We really thank God for their faithfulness and their service to our church, how much they have loved us and how much they have served us in so many ways. And we're grateful that they have this pause for a moment and get away. Before we get into the message today, I want us to do a little exercise. It is not a physical exercise, so you don't have to get up and do anything or move around or even talk to anybody, okay? You can just sit there. But if you were hoping to rest for the next couple hours while I preach, no, it was a joke. It won't be that long, hopefully, right? No, really, I do want to start out, though, with a little quick exercise for us to do. So most of us are sitting next to or near someone. And if you're not like my wife, because I'm up here, you can just pick someone, an imaginary friend. Yes, Joel, you can sit next to Christopher. And what I want you to do for a moment, as you're sitting next to that person, it might be your spouse, it might be your kids, it might be your parents, it might be a very close friend. Whoever that person is, I want you in this moment just to think for a moment. If that person was to describe you in a word or in a phrase, what would it be? Someone else is going to ask you, let's say, hey, what would you tell me about so-and-so? And that person would say, what? Just think about it. You don't have to blurt it out or say anything. Would they say that you're a kind person? Would they say that you're an honest person? Would they say that you're a hard worker or a good servant? Maybe something like that. Hopefully they don't say, he's really lazy, or he's a rotten person, or I can't stand him or her. What would they say about you? Those people that are closest to you, especially family. What about your friends? Maybe people who aren't here. Friends outside of church here. What would they say about you? What's the word or the phrase that they would come up with if they were to describe you? And what if we expand that out maybe a little bit further? Think about coworkers for a moment. Maybe you don't work anymore. What about people you worked with in the past? What about people you work with now? Your associates. How would those people describe you? What would be the word? What would be the phrase that they would come up with when they were asked about you? And let's even expand that out even just a little bit further now. Let's think about strangers, people you barely interact with. Maybe somebody you see at the Walmart, or somebody you talk to when you have a problem and you have to call like a help desk line, something like that. What would that person say about you if they were to describe you in a word or a phrase? I think we would get a lot of different responses there. I did this exercise for myself, and I made a couple of quick observations. The first one was that, generally speaking, I think that the people that know me better would probably have more negative things to say about me. The people who know me well know me so well that they would probably see some of those weaknesses and things like that. The other observation I made was that there are some people I've had so little interaction with that they may have only one impression of me. Yeah, I was thinking, I used the example of calling like a help desk line, and this is something I have had to do on occasion. And not that I would be rude, right, or anything, because why would I do that if I had a problem? But what would those people say about me? If they've only had one interaction with me in their whole life, what would those people say about me? That's all they would know. And if I was rude, that's all they would ever think about me. And that person might come in here, right, and say, oh, that's Darren. Oh, I know all about him. He's a rude person. He's not a very nice person. He's kind of an impatient person. Or would it be something different? Maybe to say, wow, he was so nice, he was so gentle, or she was so patient with me. I made those couple of observations as I went through this exercise myself, and then I looked at the Bible, and I thought about, what does the Bible say should be on our list? And the answer comes to us from John chapter 13, verses 34 and 35. And Jesus, right here, says this: "A new commandment I give to you, that you love one another, even as I have loved you, that you also love one another. By this all men will know that you are my disciples, if you have love for one another." When I went through this exercise, the word that should have been on my list, and hopefully the word that would be on yours for every group, should be love. That should be the defining characteristic of who we are according to Jesus. Before we get more into our text, would you just join me for a moment of prayer? Father in heaven, I'm so grateful that you give us an example of love, and you show us what love is. Oh, through your amazing love for us, through Jesus Christ who died and rose again, you have shown us what it takes to love. So God, as we study this passage, would you just give us open ears and humble hearts to listen? God, I confess this is a hard message to preach, not because it's hard to say, but because it's hard to do. So God, soften all our hearts to hear you now. In Jesus' name we pray, amen. "A new commandment I give to you, that you love one another, even as I have loved you, that you also love one another. By this all men will know that you are my disciples, if you have love for one another." These are great verses to memorize, by the way. Maybe by the end of the message you'll have them memorized, or it could be a little homework assignment. You can go back and do it. As we think about the passage, we can think about it, I organized it anyway, into three key questions that really helped me understand it. Number one, what is love? Number two, how is this a new commandment? Because Jesus says it's a new commandment. And number three, why does it even matter? And that's what we're going to use here as we kind of walk through this. So the first question is, what is love? Now, undoubtedly, that is a very big question. And it's something that the world is very confused about. In fact, the world has come up with all kinds of crazy ideas about what love is. And so as I was thinking about it, I found it more helpful to actually start by eliminating all the things that love is not. What isn't love? Here's one thing that love is not. Love is not an emotional state. Love isn't a feeling. Feelings come and go. You and I know this, okay? You're probably feeling a certain way right now. An hour from now, you might very well be feeling different. Whether good or bad, whatever that might look like. Our feelings change quite frequently. But Jesus commands us to love. Therefore, love can't be a feeling, because we can't just command our feelings. I can't just command myself to be happy or command myself to be in any sort of mood. My feelings are very subject to things around me. Now, don't misunderstand. Love is probably attended by feelings. We feel emotions and connections for one another, but love itself isn't a feeling. And the problem is that the culture and the world around us has really made love into an emotion. And if you're not so sure about this, just listen to any pop music song or look at anything that's depicted in TV and movies. Everything that we hear about love seems to be about how we feel. And by the way, I think this is why so many relationships just don't work out. Because the concept of love is based on something that's a feeling, that's an emotion, and feelings just aren't a reliable standard for making decisions. Our feelings are going to change, and how I feel right now is going to be different in a few hours, and in weeks or months from now even. Love isn't an emotion. Love also is not a physical connection. And look, just as the world has made love all about emotions, it's also made it all about physical connections, physical gratification. It's constant. It's everywhere. That's all that seems to be depicted about it. And again, love may involve physical contact. My dog loves when I give her a belly rub. She jumped up into the bed this morning and came up and wanted her belly rubbed, right? She felt love through that. No doubt about it. But the essence of love isn't just something physical. And to make things worse, the world has even confused the emotional and the physical, haven't they? That's why you hear people say things like this. Hey, if it feels good, what? Do it. If it feels good, do it. The feels good, that's the emotional part, right? And the do it, that's the physical part. I can only imagine what my life might look like right now if I had acted on every single emotion I ever felt. I don't know that I'd even be alive today. I'd certainly probably be in prison. Or something worse, I don't know. The point is this: those things are not reliable gauges of love. Here's the third thing love isn't. Love isn't a romantic notion. Again, movies, music, television programs, they just seem obsessed with this idea of love, right? You see it everywhere. That's what the world thinks love is. It's just romance. It's just about finding that person and just being together forever and ever, right? And certainly there is such a thing as romantic love. I will not deny that. But it's important to understand it's much more than that. I love Jesus, and I love VCE, and I love pizza, and I love spending time with my family, and none of those things have anything to do with romantic love, and it would be really weird if they did. But the world has seemed to make love all about romance and nothing else. Love isn't a romantic notion. The fourth thing that love is not just unconditional agreement with someone else or what they do. So often today we hear people say things like this: if you loved me, you'd accept me just as I am, right? Now it's true, Jesus welcomes all kinds of people. We know this. But his acceptance of people is followed by his call to change. It's because he loves people that he calls them to change. He never lets people stay comfortable in their sin. In fact, that's why he loves them so much. He doesn't want them to stay in their sin. You remember the woman caught in adultery in John chapter 8. After he had was able to send away all the people who were ready to stone her, then he turned his attention to the woman. And what did he say? I do not condemn you either. Go. Keep doing what you're doing. No, that's not what he said at all. He also didn't say, hey, I don't condemn you either. Just go now. It's okay. No, there was something very important at the very end of that. He said, I do not condemn you either. Go. From now on, sin no more. Jesus didn't just say, hey, it's okay. That's just who you are. I love you. Just carry on. That is not love. And imagine how silly it would sound if someone came in here and said, hey, you know what? I'm a bank robber, and if you really loved me, you'd accept me for who I am and not judge me. It sounds really silly, doesn't it? I mean, it sounds crazy. And yet, you know what? We do all kinds of things just like that. We just substitute the word bank robber for something else, right? Hey, I'm an adulterer, so if you really love me, just accept me the way I am. Or I'm a liar. You just need to accept that about me. Or I'm kind of a slanderer. I'm kind of mean to people. You just need to get over that and accept that. Because if you loved me, you would accept that about me. Jesus doesn't let us get away with that. We don't just unconditionally agree with other people. That is not love. And lastly, love is not a self-seeking endeavor. And I think this really sums up the previous four, because the world's concept of love is largely about satisfying oneself and getting one's own needs and desires met, whether they're emotional or physical or relational or whatever. And that's why the world says that love means that you have to agree, because you have to accept me for who I am. And if you don't, then you must not love me. The world has a very self-centered view of love. That isn't love. It's not emotional or physical or romantic or just accepting or agreeing with someone. And it's certainly not self-seeking. To understand what love is, we have to go back to what God says love is. And I'm really thankful that right here in John 13, we get an incredible picture of love from Jesus himself to his disciples. And it comes to us actually in the previous verses, and I don't have these on the slide, so I'm sorry about that. But you can listen and hear what is being said here. So in John 13, before Jesus tells his disciples, "A new commandment I give you, that you love one another," this is what happened, starting at the beginning of chapter 13. It says this: "Now before the feast of the Passover, Jesus, knowing that his hour had come, that he would depart out of this world to the Father, having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. During supper, the devil having already put into the heart of Judas Iscariot, the son of Simon, to betray him, Jesus, knowing that the Father had given all things into his hands, and that he had come forth from God and was going back to God, got up from supper and laid aside his garments, and taking a towel he girded himself. Then he poured water into the basin and began to wash the disciples' feet and to wipe them with the towel with which he was girded. So he came to Simon Peter. He said to him, 'Lord, do you wash my feet?' Jesus answered and said to him, 'What I do, you do not realize now, but you will understand hereafter.' Peter said to him, 'Never shall you wash my feet.' Jesus answered him, 'If I do not wash you, you have no part with me.' Simon Peter said to him, 'Lord, then wash not only my feet, but also my hands and my head.' Jesus said to him, 'He who is bathed needs only to wash his feet, but is completely clean. And you are clean, but not all of you.' For he knew the one who was betraying him. For this reason he said, 'Not all of you are clean.' So when he had washed their feet and taken his garments and reclined at the table again, he said to them, 'Do you know what I have done to you? You call me teacher and Lord, and you are right, for so I am. If I then, the Lord and the teacher, washed your feet, you also ought to wash one another's feet. For I gave you an example that you should do as I did to you.'" That's Jesus' demonstration of love. And we find here several qualities that Jesus exemplifies about what love actually looks like. The first one, which almost doesn't even need to be mentioned, but I will mention it anyway, is that love is an action. You notice that Jesus never tells his disciples, "I love you." I don't know if there's any place. Oh boy. Oh. Okay. Well, reset that. That was action for you. All right. Jesus never tells his disciples, "I love you." He simply shows them. In 1 John chapter 3:18, the Apostle John says, "Let us not love with word or with tongue, but in deed and truth." Jesus demonstrates love in a real, tangible way. I can't help but think of something my mom used to tell me many, many years ago when I was young. You know, it's probably Mother's Day or it's Valentine's Day or something like that, and I write a nice little note, and, "Mommy, I love you," right? And she appreciated that. But as I got older, she said, "You know, what I'd like is, could you do the dishes? Could you make your bed? Could you do something? Show me that you love me. Don't just tell me that you love me." Love is an action. And love is service. It's not just a random kind of action here. It's actually an action that serves other people's. Jesus did something here to serve his disciples. Their feet were dirty and they needed to be cleaned, and Jesus washed their feet. That was a real, tangible, actionable service that they needed. And another quality we see here is humility. Washing someone else's feet would have been a slave's job. And you'll notice that the disciples here, they didn't wash each other's feet, did they? In fact, they didn't even bother to wash their own feet. The job was so low for them that when there wasn't someone there to do it, they'd just rather have dirty feet at dinner. Dirty, stinky feet, rather than wash them. And if anyone here should have been washing someone's feet, it should have been the disciples washing Jesus' feet. Instead, it's Jesus who gets down, kneels down, and takes their feet and washes them. And he didn't just wash one pair of feet, he washed all 12 of them. 12 dirty, stinky, well, 24 feet, right? 12 times 2. That's humility. That's getting down and doing the thing that no one else wanted to do or was willing to do. And that leads us to the next part, is this willingness. Jesus willingly did this. You know, sometimes when we do things for other people, sometimes we do it out of a resentful or begrudging kind of attitude, right? We do it and it's the right thing to do, but we really, really don't enjoy it. And that's not love. Sometimes we do it out of guilt, right? Someone kind of guilts us into doing something. They say, well, you know, you should do this, right? Or make us feel bad about it. So we're like, oh, I guess I should do it because he's telling me I should do this, right? Jesus didn't do it out of that either. And it's not just duty either. Sometimes we just soldier on and we just do it because it's something we know we should do. But Jesus did this willingly. He made the decision to get up. And it wasn't just because he couldn't stand the way their feet smelled. It's because he wanted to do something for them. He wanted to serve them. Another thing we see here is sacrifice. It's very interesting. Jesus has this little interaction with Simon Peter. And Peter, he doesn't understand what's going on here. And Jesus tells him, what I do, you do not realize now. In other words, you don't understand it now, but you will understand it later. And then he said this, if I don't wash you, you have no part with me. By washing their feet, Jesus was foreshadowing what he was about to do at the cross by giving his life for them. Listen, the issue here wasn't dirty feet. It was dirty souls. What needed to be washed wasn't dust, it was sin. And Jesus was going to do that by going to the cross, dying, suffering, taking their sin upon himself. And through his resurrection would give them freedom from sin forever. And he's showing this through this humble act of getting down there and cleaning that part of them that is icky, that nobody else would want to look at. And he would do that through his sacrifice. Love sacrifices for other people. Love gives of itself. It's not a self-seeking endeavor. Love gives to other people. And then lastly, there's an aspect of what I would call sanctification here. In verse 9, it says that Simon Peter said to him, okay, well, Lord, that's great. Then don't just wash my feet. Give me a whole bath. Basically, that's my interpretation, right? He said, wash my hands, wash my head. I want to be completely clean. And Jesus said this, he who is bathed needs only to wash his feet, but is completely clean, and you are clean. You see, when someone would bathe and then go out, and in this time, right, they have their robes on and everything, or whatever it is they wore. their body would be clean, but their feet, as they walked along the road, would get dirty again and dusty. And in the very same way, when we belong to Jesus, our souls are clean, but practically speaking, as we walk through each day, we get dust on our feet that needs to be washed off. And so when we love each other, we help wash each other's feet from this buildup of sin, so to speak. We help make each other more like Jesus. We show love like Jesus in this way. So what is love then? In 1 John 4, chapter 4, verse 8 and verse 16, he gives this very simple definition. He says, God is love. All the qualities of love, all these things here, sacrifice and humility and willingness and service, all those things are found in the person of Jesus Christ. He's the embodiment of love itself. And if we want to know how to love, then we just have to look at Jesus. So what are some practical ways that we can show love to one another by washing each other's feet? Here's a few ideas, and you can come up with a list, probably dozens more, but here are a few things. You can do the dirty, unpleasant tasks that nobody else wants to do. These aren't on the slide either, sorry. You can do the dirty or unpleasant tasks that nobody else wants to do. You know, the last few months we were doing renovation in this building. There was a lot of dirt and dust being kicked up in here as we were putting up drywall and spackling and sanding and painting. It was impossible not to get dirty in what we were doing here. There are dirty, unpleasant things that nobody else wants to do, maybe, and that's a way to show love. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean construction work. It doesn't have to be that, although I will mention we're having a church work day next Saturday, so if you want to sign up, this would be a great opportunity. But it doesn't have to be physical labor even. There are other things that might be unpleasant, something that nobody else seems to want to do. That's a way to show love. How about this one? We can serve those who often get overlooked. There are people in churches that just kind of get on the margins, right? And we know they're there. And we kind of see them, and they're kind of in and out. But we don't really make an effort to engage with them. Serving people like that is a great way to show love. It's a great way to reach out to them. Here's another idea. How about bearing someone else's burden by listening? Several weeks back, we heard a message about bearing burdens, right? Carrying one another's burdens. That's love. And just by listening to someone, we can help carry that burden of love. How about meeting someone's practical needs? You know, this isn't complex. It could be like giving someone a meal or giving someone a ride. It's not complicated necessarily, but it's very practical, and it's a great way to show love to someone. How about cleansing a relationship through forgiveness? You know, things are going to happen, right? Sometimes we're going to offend one another. And if not here, certainly in our homes, right? With our family or our friends. I mean, it's going to happen. You know, a great way to show love and wash one another is just through forgiveness. Learning to forgive, learning to let go. And lastly, I think of accountability and confession. This is a great way to wash one another's feet. I have the privilege of meeting with another brother in the church here every couple of weeks, and we get together. And the idea, of course, is for me to be able to put my dirty feet out there, you know, to be real about what's going on with me. And he helps wash my feet. And I need to do a better job at it, by the way, too, because it's not easy. Who wants to take off their feet and have their stinky feet out for everybody to see and smell? Nobody. But you know what? When we learn to do that, and that person helps wash, It's such a beautiful thing. And we start to experience God's love for one another that way. Accountability, confession, friendship. This is a great way to wash one another's feet. One thing I noticed in this is that washing feet didn't require any special skill. That's why slaves could do it. You didn't have to have a high degree of skill to wash someone's feet. And I find it easier to complain about someone's dirty, smelly feet than to do anything about it. Why? Because I don't want to be inconvenienced, or I don't want to get my hands dirty, or I don't want to get involved. But if I'm honest, it's actually not so hard. It just requires a little bit of humility and a little bit of willingness. Jesus says, "A new commandment I give to you, that you love one another, even as I have loved you, that you also love one another. By this all men will know that you are my disciples, if you have love for one another." We know what love is, and now we have this command from Jesus to go and do it. And I think this is a very little important starting point as we think about how it's a new commandment. But first of all, think about the fact that it is a commandment. This isn't good advice. This isn't Jesus saying, listen, here, go ahead and do this because your relationships are going to get a whole lot easier. If you do this, things are going to be better for you. Jesus says it's a commandment. Commandments have only one response, one right response anyway, and that is to obey. And that means to disobey is a sin. So Jesus says, I'm commanding you to love one another. But he says it's a new commandment. And this might trip us up a little bit here because we hear this a lot in church. We know throughout the Bible we're supposed to love each other, right? We hear Jesus talk about this in the second greatest commandment. He says, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. But he says here's a new commandment for you. Love one another. And it sounds really similar to us. But I think there's at least two ways I saw anyway, in which we can say this is different than that. This is new in two ways. First of all, it has a new scope. Let me read the verse for you one more time here. It says, a new commandment I give to you, that you love, here it is, one another. Even as I have loved you, that you also love, here it is, one another. By this all men will know that you are my disciples, if you have love for one another. Jesus didn't say, love your neighbor. He said, love one another. The scope here is one another. So who's the one another? Who's Jesus talking to? Well, we say, he's saying, we should be loving people in general. Yes, for sure we should. But specifically here, he is talking to his disciples. And he's telling those guys, hey, all of you need to love one another. Peter, you need to love John. And John, you need to love Andrew. And Andrew, you have to love Thomas. And Thomas, Matthew, you guys got to love each other there. Matthew, you got to love Philip. So on. Jesus was getting ready to return to heaven, and those guys needed to love one another. Amongst themselves, they needed to have that kind of bond. So if we expand this out, this commandment to love one another is focused on the church and disciples of Jesus. That's a little bit different than just loving your neighbor. And we might say, well, why focus on them? Why give them a specific command? And I think one of the reasons is because sometimes it's hardest to love the people we're closest to. In fact, sometimes it's actually easier to love our neighbor whom we don't know very well, or to love a stranger whom we don't know at all, than to love a brother or sister whom we know very well. I know this because in my own family, the people that are hardest to love are there. And Jesus knows our hearts very well. He knows that this is the thing we're going to struggle with the most. And that's why he gives it as a command, because he knows our tendency is to not always do it. We need to be reminded we got to love one another. There's another part of this. It's not just a new scope, so to speak, but it's also a new standard. Again, let's look at the verse. It says, "A new commandment I give to you, that you love one another, even as I have loved you." That you also love one another. By this all men will know that you're my disciples, if you have love for one another. Jesus didn't say, love your neighbor as yourself. Not here. Here he says, love one another as I have loved you. That's the standard. And I like the word even. I'm using that in my translation here. Some translations say just as I have loved you. But I like the word even. There's something about that word because it pictures something that's level. Two things that are even. Jesus says, look, as I've loved you here, that's where you need to love. You know, when we were doing the building renovation here, there were lots of things that needed to be hung level. Back in the kids' room there's a big sticker on the wall. And we had to hang that thing up. It's huge. I had no idea how to make a circle level and centered on a wall. Thankfully, there's a YouTube video for that. But it took some effort. Scott and I had to, if you see the welcome kiosk, you know, you come in, you probably just pass right by it, right? Take a look at that little VCE logo. It's nice and level. Why? Because Scott showed me how to put it on level. Because it had to be even. And it wasn't easy to do. We didn't just slap it on there. It took effort and it took patience. Jesus doesn't want us to love each other in the same subjective way that we love ourselves. He wants us to love one another the way that he loves us, which is through humility and sacrifice and service. That's the standard of love that Jesus sets for us. And admittedly, that is a high standard. And that's why when I think about this, and I was thinking about preparing this message, I said, wow, it's really easy to read, and it's really hard to do. Because if it was me, it's like, well, I can give my best, right? My best is down here. Jesus says, no, Darren. You got to love at the level I'm loving. So why does it even matter? That's our third question. What's love? How's it a new commandment? Why does it even matter? Well, again, look at the verse. It says, a new commandment I give to you, that you love one another even as I have loved you, that you also love one another. Why? By this all men will know that you are my disciples, if you have love for one another. In other words, our witness to the world is directly tied to how well you and I can love one another here. And I thought about this and I said, boy, sometimes we make it about so many different things. I read into this verse all kinds of other things. Hey, when you have a nice church building, all people will know you're my disciples, right? Hey, when you have good music, all people will know you're my disciples. And when you have a glitch-free service, all people will know you're my disciples, right? No technical problems or anything. Or how about this? When you serve good food, all people will know you're my disciples. Or when you have great preaching, all people will know that you're my disciples. Or when you know the Bible really well, then people will know you're my disciples. Or how about when you pray real eloquently, all people will know you're my disciples. Don't misunderstand, those are all very good things. We're glad for a glitch-free service, right? When microphones work and music is good and food is delicious. We love those things. But here's the point. They should be driven by love, but none of those things are going to identify us to the world as disciples of Jesus. Surely if we do all those things, but we don't love, we will be identified as something. If we don't love one another, how are they going to know we're followers of Jesus? That's the mark. All of these other things make sense when we love one another. And so I find in this command something that is comforting. It's comforting because it's so simple. You know, we don't always have to have the right answers to give to people. Someone may come to us with questions and try to pick apart why the Bible isn't true, and what about this, and what about that. And we may not have answers for that, but you know what? They can see our love for one another. That's something we can do. That's something more powerful than all the answers we might be able to give. It's simple. But it's also convicting. It's convicting because it's difficult. It's not easy to love one another. You know, I read somewhere that the church's most bitter disputes aren't because of differences in doctrine or opinion, but because of the unloving way those differences are handled. It's hard to do. It's hard to love other people sometimes. So I have a few so whats here, and really these are kind of like steps. I thought about how could I take this and put it into practice? Well, number one, remember how much Christ loves you. Look, we cannot love one another the way Christ has loved us unless we know how much Christ has loved us. And the only way to truly know that is to have a relationship with him. You need to be washed before you can wash others. The starting point is always Jesus' love. When we start there, when we remember what he did for us, to make us clean from our sin through his death and resurrection, then we're ready to love one another. Listen, no one can love even as Christ is loved unless we know what Christ's love is, unless we have that same love, unless we understand it. It's going to be a fruitless and discouraging endeavor to try and serve someone else and sacrifice for someone else. The starting point has to be God's love for us. Remember how much Christ loves you. Second, I want to challenge you here. Identify one person here at VCE that is hard for you to love. And you know, I thought about this. I said, somebody's going to say, well, it's not that hard, right? I love everybody. Listen, maybe you don't know everybody as well as you need to then. If you think you're doing okay loving everybody, get to know someone a little bit better. I guarantee you, the more you get to know someone, the more you're going to find certain things are hard to love. You know, I think here, there's always someone that I can find that I need to do a better job of loving. You know, I was thinking about myself here, and I said, you know, I don't always make it easy for other people to love me. You know, I'd like to think that everybody just, you know, they love me, right? And be around me. But, you know, if I'm honest, I must annoy some people. I must drive some people nuts. And you might be sitting there saying, well, I don't know if that's true. Listen, there's at least one person in this room who can testify to that, and she's sitting right there. And the other one is in Village Kids right now. You know, they love me, but I don't always make it easy for them. Listen, there's somebody here that we can do better on. There must be somebody here that just drives you a little bit nuts. That might be the person to reach out to. And listen, God's giving you an opportunity today. We have a church picnic. This is a great time to get to know some people. Come on out. Get to know someone a little better. Identify one person that you can love better. And lastly, think of a way you can begin to show love to that person. And I realized after I wrote this, it sounds like I'm just saying to think of it, right? Somebody's going to say, well, you just told me to think of it. I thought of how I could love that person, but I didn't do it. No, think of how you can love someone and then do it. Think of a way you can begin to show love to someone and obey Jesus' command and show love the way that he loved us. Listen, if we can't love one another as brothers and sisters, how are we going to love our enemies who hate us? If you and I cannot love on each other, how are we going to love someone who really hates us? We are not enemies. We are Jesus' disciples. We are his followers. And if Jesus is here now, he's saying exactly the same thing. He's saying, Darren, you got to love Mark. Mark, you got to love Robert. And Robert, you got to love Christopher. And Christopher, you got to love Carrie. And Carrie, you got to love Nikki. And so on. It's the same thing. So we have an opportunity today to get to know one another. So I encourage you, if you can, come out to the church picnic. But even if you can't, think of a way that you can show love to someone. And let's put it into practice. I close with the verse one more time, just so that we can have this in our hearts. Jesus says, "A new commandment I give to you, that you love one another, even as I have loved you, that you also love one another. By this, all men will know you are my disciples, if you have love for one another." Let's close our eyes and bow our heads and pray. As we close our eyes and bow our heads, let's think about what the Lord has said to us here. Let's ponder his amazing love for us and think about how we can love one another. And Lord Jesus, thank you. Thank you for loving us so much. You washed away the dirt from our, not just our feet, but the sin from our souls. And that was far worse than anything else. And God, you did that because of how much you loved us. You sacrificed your one and only Son for us. Oh God, thank you so much for that. And God, would you be merciful to us, because we know that this is not easy to do. Oh, so often we fail in loving one another. I don't even come close at times to loving even as you have loved. Would you fill my own heart with a renewed desire to have, to put into practice what I've heard here today, to sacrifice for one another, to sacrifice for others humbly and willingly. God, help us all to grow in your image this way and to help one another wash each other's feet so that we can be known as a church that loves one another. Whatever's on our list, God, whatever it is, that when someone else sees us, they'll say they love one another. Oh God, would you make us a church like that? In Jesus' name, amen.